Hello, Packers fans, wherever you may be. It's time for your pre-game edition of the Pack Attack Cast for Packers versus Cardinals. We're posting this on Saturday night because I will be actually traveling to the game in Phoenix in the morning, so we can't do a pre-game show on Sunday morning. So I'll try to provide any updates that I can from the stadium if they are material. But please check the, before the game for any key injury updates. There are a couple key injuries for both teams that might go down to the wire, so definitely check your pregame shows to see if the Packers or the Cardinals are going to have any significant changes to availability. That being said, let's start out our pregame show by looking at the Packers and the Cardinals injury reports for this game. I'm going to talk about key players that could impact the game. So we have Aaron Banks, who is a limited participant on Thursday and Friday with a groin and knee injury, but he is not designated with a game status, which means he is good to go. So Aaron Banks will be good for the Packers. Anthony Belton is listed as questionable for this game. Watch that very closely because I think there's a 50-50 chance that Zach Tom plays in this game. So you might be seeing Anthony Belton at right tackle in this game. So we're going to watch that very closely up until game time. Nate Hobbs had limited participation on Friday with a knee injury. So we're going to have to see if Nate Hobbs can play in this game. If he cannot play, then Carrington Valentine will come in for Nate Hobbs. And you'll see the Packers make an adjustment at nickel with Bullard. So if Nate Hobbs cannot play, he's primarily been playing the slot and limited on the outside. But if Nate Hobbs can't play, you're going to have Carrington Valentine on the outside, and then you're going to have Bullard playing the nickel. The Cardinals don't have as much of a nickel threat as other teams we've seen the Packers play lately, so I think that's going to be less of a factor with Nate Hobbs in or out of the lineup, but watch that very carefully. Josh Jacobs was a limited participant on Wednesday, limited participant on Thursday, full participant on Friday with a calf injury designation. The fact that he was a full participant on Friday leads me to believe that Josh Jacobs will be fine unless there's some sort of last-minute tightening of that calf that keeps him out of this game. But I do fully expect Josh Jacobs to have his usual workload, so I'm not worried about that. Brandon McManus did not practice on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. He's listed as questionable. The Packers still have a backup kicker on the roster. I think if Brandon McManus wakes up on Sunday and he's feeling fine, I think they would put him into the game, even though he did not practice this week, because he's an experienced professional and an elite kicker. So I wouldn't worry about Brandon McManus if he's in the game. If the backup kicker gets thrown into the game, while he played solid last week, look for the Packers to be more aggressive in the red zone and on fourth downs on the Cardinal side of the field if they are looking at field goals longer than 40 yards, because that's where our backup kicker gets a little shaky. So we'll see what happens there, but hopefully Brandon McManus gets back into the lineup this week. We'll probably know that Sunday morning right before kickoff. If they deactivate Brandon McManus from the active roster, then you know that they're going with the backup kicker this week. Other key injuries, there's some that are not significant, some that aren't. Zach Tom is listed as questionable. He was limited in participation on Thursday and Friday. So it's about 50-50 whether Zach Tom plays. Zach Tom was a real trooper last week, fought through a lot of physical pain, so maybe he'll do that again this week, or they'll rest him because it's more important that he's ready to play against the Steelers next Sunday night, because that's a huge matchup. I think if Anthony Belton went in place of Zach Tom, or if they use Kennard in place of Zach Tom, I think the Packers will be fine in this game. Lucas Van Ness is out. Christian Watson has been scheduled as out for this game. A lot of people were wondering if Christian Watson can get into this game, but I think they're taking a very cautious approach for Christian Watson. I do think he will play against the Steelers next week, even if it is on a limited basis. Dontavian Wicks is questionable with an ankle injury. He participated on a limited basis all week, so I think Wicks will probably be able to go in this game. Devontae Wyatt is out. He did not practice all of this week. So that's a big issue against any other team. But I think the Packers want Devontae Wyatt to be back into the lineup against the Steelers, who have a much better run game than the Cardinals. And I think the Packers can hold up okay against the run without Devontae Wyatt this week. Now let's talk about the Cardinals. Let's take a look at these. We have Amari DeMarcado, who's a backup running back. He is out this week with an ankle injury. That's really going to hurt the explosive component of the Cardinals' run game, because he's a very explosive player. So we'll have to see if that's an impact into this game. We have Will Hernandez, questionable for the offensive line. We have Zay Jones, questionable with a knee injury. That's going to be a big issue. Kyler Murray is also questionable with a foot injury. I think Kyler Murray is more likely than not to play in this game, because the Cardinals have their bye week next week, and it makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals to let Kyler Murray have 2 more weeks to heal. Although the Cardinals are desperate for a win, so maybe they throw Kyler Murray out if he feels okay on Sunday. He did not practice with the starters all week. He did practice with the practice squad over the week. Walter Nolan is out with limited participation due to a calf injury. And that is it for the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be questionable, possibly due to a concussion, but he cleared his concussion protocol, so he will be playing as normal this week. So those are your injury news and notes. Once again, we're recording this on Saturday afternoon. In the event that you have some fantasy or gambling considerations, please check the updates before the game. Now let's talk about the keys of victory for both of these teams. Let's talk about the Packers' keys to victory. Number one, in my opinion, is they need to contain Trey McBride. He's the biggest weapon that the Cardinals have. Marvin Harrison Jr. is more of a flashier target for the Cardinals, but he hasn't really been that explosive this year. It's really Trey McBride that is the engine for this offense. The Cardinals are 6-2 over the last 2 seasons when he averages over 10 yards per target. Green Bay must limit his efficiency in the short passing game. So when Trey McBride gets the ball, it's going to be very important that whoever's covering him tackles him immediately to limit those big gains. The Packers have not won on the road yet this season. Staying disciplined and focused and avoiding a slow start is really key when you're on the road. Jordan Love and the Packers need to stretch the field and create chunk gains to keep pressure off the run game. With Kyler Murray banged up and Jacoby Brissett probably being the starter this week, Green Bay must force pressure and force mistakes for Brissett. We also want to limit the running game for the Cardinals. The Cardinals have really struggled in the running game, especially with the injury of Connor week 1. So the one of the keys to the game is really stopping the run, and the Packers are number one in run defense so far this year, to really force Jacoby Brissett to make big plays to stay competitive in this game. We really need to win the turnover matchup, especially on the road. Packers need to see if they can get some game-changing turnovers in this game. They really haven't done that so far this year. And we have to avoid turnovers on the other side of the ball. The stats and the players really favor the Packers in this game. So giving up the ball with a turnover would really help the Cardinals stay in this game. And let's look at the Cardinals' keys to victory in this game. Kyler Murray, if he does play, gives them a mobility in the quarterback and as a runner that cannot be overstated. So if he does play, the Packers are really going to have to focus on loading up to stop the mobile quarterback here. If Kyler Murray is not in the game, Jacoby Brissett is not as mobile as Kyler Murray, so they could focus more on stopping the run. One of the challenges for the Packers this week is the fact that they're looking at a situation where they really have two different quarterbacks to prepare for. So you're going to have to watch that very closely and see if that is a big factor in this game, because the playing style for defending against the quarterbacks here really is impacted by which quarterback plays in this game. So we're going to have to watch that very closely. The Cardinals are definitely going to lean on McBride, as I said, and they need to try to establish the run attack. So if the Packers can really keep their record of playing good against the run, I think the Packers can be very successful in this game in forcing Brissett to make big plays, which can lead to big turnovers and give the Packers a comfortable win. The Cardinals have to try to be very disciplined to avoid explosive plays for Jordan Love and the receivers, especially Matthew Golden, who's been red hot after last week. And we'll have to see what happens there. But overall, I think the matchups and keys to the game really factor the Green Bay Packers in this game. It's really about avoiding mistakes for the Packers, and they should win this game successfully. As I said in my pre-stream earlier this week, I've seen a lot of tickets that are very cheap on the market, which really tells me that the Cardinals fans are kind of dumping their tickets, which means you might have almost a home field advantage for the Green Bay Packers in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if the crowd isn't 60-40 Packers, because the Packers love to travel. The tickets are on big discounts, and this is actually the farthest west that the Packers go this season. So there's a lot of Packers fans on the West Coast, I used to be one when I lived in California, that would look at a game like this game as a great travel game. So look for the Packers to have a lot of fans in attendance in this game, and I think that will be a really big factor in this game, especially since I've seen Cardinals fans pretty much dumping their tickets at cost because they've kind of lost faith in their team this year. So we're going to have to see what happens there. Again, some key matchups to watch in this game. We've got Trey McBride versus Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie, trying to eliminate those big plays for McBride in this game. Marvin Harrison Jr. Versus Keyshawn Nixon, I think is going to be a really big matchup in this game. Also, it could be Carrington Valentine, depending on which side of the field that Marvin Harrison lines up on. We're going to have to see the Packers O-line can hold up against the Cardinals pass rush. The Cardinals pass rush has been very hit and miss this year. So the last thing the Packers want to do is get the Cardinals fired up with a couple sacks early in this game to give them confidence in their ability to impact the game. Josh Jacobs is going to have to be a big part of this game. Uh, the Cardinals will try to make the Packers one-dimensional in this game, so I think Josh Jacobs is really going to pound the rock very consistently in this game. Now let's take a look at PFF and take a look at some of the key matchups in this game. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. All right, here we go. So here's the game. The Packers are 3-1-1, 2-3 against the spread because they've been heavily favored in a couple games where they won by a close margin. The game is a 2:25 kickoff Mountain Time. It would be 3:25 in Green Bay. And the Cardinals are 2-4 and 3-3 against the spread. It's really important to remember that despite the Cardinals being a 2-4 team, they've lost 4 games by a total of 9 points. So they are a very competitive, plucky team that tries to keep the game close. So we'll see if the Packers can try to change that narrative and come out and take a lead early in this game. Incidentally, the Packers are the one team in the NFL that has achieved a 10-point or more lead in every game that they've played, and they've avoided being behind by 10 points or more in every game that they played. And that's really a good sign for the Packers going into this matchup. Let's take a look at the overall comparison of these two teams. Power ranking per PFF, the Packers are number 2. The Cardinals are 27. On defense, the Packers are 14. The Cardinals are 17th. Again, a lot of the defense power ranking here is really based on the shootout they got in with the Cowboys. The Packers are actually a much better defense than 14th. Power ranking on offense, the Packers are 4th, and the Cardinals are 13th. So that's really where the gap closes between these two teams. The Cardinals do have the ability to put up points, and they have the ability to make explosive plays. So that's really where the margin closes between the two teams. Strength of schedule played, the Packers are 20th, and the Cardinals are 32nd in the lead. They have had the softest schedule per PFF so far. Running plays, the Cardinals only run 33% of the time, so the Packers are going to be in the nickel a lot of this game. And the Packers are at 44.2. Look for the Packers on the road, especially with offensive line depth concerns, to try to get that closer to 50-50 in this game. Let's take a look at the quarterback comparison, because I do think this is a big part of where this game would win. For PFF, the Jordan Love is at 83 ranking, and Jacoby Brissett is at 76. So there's a significant change between the two quarterbacks. Keep in mind, Brissett only had one start last week against the Colts, so it's hard to decide which Brissett we're going to see. Are we going to see the Brissett that played very well against the Colts, or are we going to see him closer to where he historically has played as a backup? We'll see what happens here. Big thing to watch in this game is big throw percentage. That is when the quarterback makes big plays in the passing game. Jordan Love does that on 6% of his passes. Jacoby Brissett only does that on 2% of his passes. So we're going to have to watch that very closely. So I think that the advantage in this game definitely goes between Jordan Love and Jacoby Brissett. It's not even close. Let's take a look at the lineups now for this game. We're going to start out with the Cardinals on offense. Let's look at their two tight end set first. We're going to put the Packers in the nickel because this is what we're going to see most of the time in this game. So we can see McKinney and Williams are playing very well. Cooper's playing well. Walker's playing well. Nate Hobbs and Carrington Valentine on one outside corner are playing well. And Keyshawn Nixon is playing very well on the other corner. We have Bullard in the slot, who's actually improving. Bullard has actually played better the last couple weeks than early in the season as the slot defender. So we're going to have to see if Bullard can continue to improve. We've got Micah Parsons, of course. He doesn't need any identification. And at defensive tackle, we have Brooks and Wooden. Wooden has been holding in very well as a emergency start with Wyatt out. Rashawn Gary is also playing solid on the other side. So can the Packers hold up against the run attack? I think we should have a pretty good standing there. For the Cardinals, let's take a look at their offense here. We have Marvin Harrison, who's their biggest threat outside of McBride. And I think Nixon versus Harrison should be a matchup that the Packers can win more likely than not. McBride against Cooper and Walker, I think that's going to be one of the keys to the game, and we're going to have to watch that very closely. Wilson, as their number 2 wide receiver, is not much of a threat. He's more of a possession receiver. So I think if they can wrap up Marvin Harrison Jr., the Packers are going to be in a good position to win this game. Looking at the offensive line, the left tackle has been playing well for the Cardinals, as well as their center. Both of their guards and their right tackle are below average, so look for that to be a key factor in this matchup. And the Cardinals have really struggled with the running game. Let's quickly take a look at the Cardinals in the 3 wide receiver and see how that might impact things. You have Jones come in. Wilson tends to move to the slot. Again, not a significant advantage here. I would argue that the Packers' nickel defense is far better than the Cardinals' 3 wide receiver offense. So we're going to have to see how that works. Now let's flip the field here. We're going to go Cardinals on defense. We're going to look at their nickel because that's probably going to be the biggest factor in this game. Let's look at the Packers in the 2 tight end formation, which is their most efficient formation. Taylor Damerson is 13th out of 80 safeties, so he is a very solid free safety. Budda Baker is not playing very well at all. He is 74th out of 80 at the strong safety, so the Packers could definitely take shots deep against this Cardinals defense. Their linebackers are not playing very well at all. Davis Gaither and Wilson Jr., our senior, are not playing very well. They're 54th and 49th in the league. So this is going to be a really good game, perhaps, where they can unleash Tucker Kraft against these below average linebackers and have a big key to the game with Tucker Kraft making big plays in the middle. Looking at their corners, Melton is playing below average, so Romeo Doubs or Matthew Golden, whoever's matched up against Melton, should have a very good game this week. Their defensive line, they have Sweat, which is probably their biggest threat to go after Jordan Love, but he would be going after against Quay Walker, so I think that's pretty much going to be a wash, and the rest of their defensive line is not that scary. They do have Johnson, who's a very solid corner, so whoever is locked up with Johnson, look for Jordan Love to look at the other side of the field and try to make plays with the other receiver. So again, if Johnson is matched up against Golden, then look for them to go to Romeo Doubs and vice versa. And again, Tucker Kraft should do very well in this game. The Packers offensive line is doing better as they get healthy, so I'm hoping that will continue to be a good trend in this game. It's important to note that Jordan Morgan is going to be starting at right guard, and that's going to be a big change for the offensive line, but he took up over at right guard in the middle of the game last week, and he played very well, so I think they're rewarding him with some success. Taking a look at quarterback, Jordan Love is 7th out of 37 quarterbacks, and Josh Jacobs, per PFF, is the 2nd ranked running back in the league out of 51. So again, look for them to really focus on the running game here. Let's take a look at 3 wide receiver for the Packers. See if that will give us an advantage. It does. We've got Wicks, Dobbs, and Golden against Melton, Thompson, and Johnson. And I think that really favors the Green Bay Packers to make some big plays in their 3 wide receiver set. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Pack Attack Cast with our Cardinals versus Packers pregame. Once again, we're recording this on Saturday night, so please check this out. Check out injury updates right before the game, since we're recording this about 16 hours before the game. We will be at the game physically, so we're not going to have a post-game reaction show on Sunday because I'll actually be traveling back from Arizona. But on Monday morning, we'll give you our thoughts on how the game went, win or lose. Hopefully, we'll be talking about a Green Bay Packer victory. We'll see you then. As always, go Pack Go. And hopefully, the Packers will come out of the desert 4-1-1. And it's really interesting to note that the Packers have a lot at stake here because the Detroit Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing on Sunday night. If the Packers win and Detroit wins, then the Packers could actually be the number 1 seed in the NFC. If, on the other hand, the Tampa Bay Bucs win and the Lions lose, the Packers will actually gain a full game over the Detroit Lions in the NFC North. Personally, I would like to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Lions because I think the Lions are more of a direct threat to the Green Bay Packers. We might be facing Tampa in the playoffs, but you know what? That's literally 4 months from now. I'd like to get the Lions in a position where they're looking at a full game behind the Green Bay Packers and really pressing to close the distance before the game against the Packers on Thanksgiving. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Pack Attack Cast. We will again see you on Monday morning for our thoughts on hopefully a Packer victory. And as always, go Pack Go.